What is the one thing that troubles you the most, that haunts you, that you think you suppressed, or you think it is lingering in the back of your mind and you just can't get rid of it? And that's one of the things that I want to talk about today, is healing from your past. It's a little different from all the other topics that I've dealt with, but I feel like it's essential to kind of talk about it. Before we get into it, make sure you like, subscribe, you hit that notification bell, and you go ahead and share this content. Make sure you look at all of our other videos, and make sure you definitely check out some of our newer videos that's going to come up. So if you hit that notification bell, you know you'll be notified. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So healing from your past. Now, I know it's probably one of the most difficult things to do, is to take some of that trauma that you may have gone through and work through it in a manner where you can heal and resolve some of those issues that you go through. And I can be the one to tell you that it's actually difficult to actually try to heal from past trauma. There's instances where you have trauma and you don't know what the trauma is. And then there are instances where you do know what the trauma is, but you don't know how to heal from it. And you may know the trauma, but you don't want to heal from it because it's too painful to have to relive. It's too painful to actually try to go through. So I'm just here to I can't guide you through that process, but I want to let you know that you're not alone. And there are ways that you can combat this and you can get through it, whether you do it by yourself or you go through therapy. And I'm going to go ahead and share some of my own experiences on how I kind of work through some of my trauma. Now, one of the things that I struggle with right now is the death of my grandmother. Now, I know some people may feel like that's not necessarily a trauma, but my grandmother died abruptly, and it was shocking not only for me, but for the rest of the family. But I took it the hardest because of the relationship that me and her had. And I think about all the conversations that me and her used to have together. I think about all of the conversations that she would present to me, life lessons that I was not even aware that I needed at the time. And the lectures that she gave me, thinking about the childhood that I had growing up with her. And I know that everybody experiences death differently, and sometimes death happens abruptly for everybody. But I know for me, it wasn't something I could just readily get over. We're looking at 8 years since she's been gone, and I still have not gotten over her death. And it's been a hard thing for me to kind of walk away from, because I yearn for her presence, to hear her voice, and to have those one-on-one conversations, and for her to see me where I am now, and I can kind of share my experiences that I've had over the last 8 years with her, and for her to tell me that she's proud of me and that I should keep going on the path that I'm on. It haunts me from time to time. There's times where I want to go into her gravesite and have a conversation, but it just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like she's listening to me. It doesn't feel like she's able to respond in a way that we were accustomed to having conversations with her. And it's a big thing for me, as I had stated, because of our relationship. And I'm working my way through it, slowly but surely. They say that time heals all wounds, but for some reason this wound is slowly closing. There are times where I just wish that I can tell her about some of the things that I'm going through at work, and she can actually provide me with a sound response. It's probably going to be a rehash of her her heydays of when she worked, at whatever organization that she would tell me about. Because it was far in between that she would work at organizations, but she would have those conversations with me, and somewhere in there was a life lesson. Somewhere in there was something that I was going to learn, or I was going to come across, and then I was going to kind of pull up from there. So that's a little bit about what I'm going through, what I've been going through for quite a long time right now. And I think one of the things that I'm doing to kind of get past it is I'm just kind of reliving some of the memories that we had and instilling some of that conversation and those behaviors into my son going forward. Just the same way she lectured me, I lecture my son. Telling him about some of the things that I've been through, that I've seen, and in hopes that it would hit him the same way it did me when I got into the same situation, or come across a situation just a little sooner. So that's one of the things that I kind of dealt with in those situations. And don't get me wrong, there are other things that have occurred in my life where I had to work my way through it, so far as trauma. Not having my dad around, having father figures in my life. And I think not having my dad around was a big one, coming up as a kid, because in my old neighborhood, there was my grandma, everybody in the neighborhood pretty much had a grandparent, or they lived with their grandparent. And the grandparents, they knew each other, and they knew all the kids in the neighborhood. So all the kids in the neighborhood got a talking to. And if we didn't get a talking to, then more likely they wanted us to go get a switch off the tree. So that was a whole thing in my neighborhood. It was really one of those old school villages where everybody was involved in rearing the kids. And we appreciated it. A lot of us that came out of that neighborhood has excelled in one way or another. And we have prospered, from those conversations that we had with old heads in the neighborhood. They was really in our ass. Like, I can't even lie. We were some little troublemakers. Running off the block. We wasn't supposed to go around the corner. We went around the corner. We wasn't supposed to hang in the alley. We hung in the alley. Played basketball on crates and everything. We wasn't supposed to do it. They really didn't want us to do too much of any of that stuff, because don't hang in the alleys because crackheads were back there, or you had people back there selling drugs and everything. But we did it anyway, and when we got caught, it was a whole conversation. So, and the reason why I say my dad's a big one, because I wonder if he was there every day, and his presence was like really felt, and his knowledge was being passed on, and me understanding where I came from so far as his family, and being more in tune with my family from that side, and cousins and uncles and aunties and everything. Not saying that I'm not cool with them now, because I'm cool with them, but what would the relationship be like had my father really been ingrained in my life? If he was able to take me to other places and show me other things that I haven't been able to see, or I wasn't witnessing until I got later on in life, so far as traveling and everything. Just having that one-on-one time. Like, what would that have looked like? What would that have done? And having that separation from my father for so many years, I think it played a factor in, I think it had two things. It did two things for me. One, it made me realize that I did not want to be away from my son when he was born. I didn't want to give up. Regardless if I had to pay child support or anything, I didn't want to give up. And I knew what it was like to not have a father, because I had father figures coming in and out of my life, some positive, some negative. And the reason why I say a negative father figure is because even though that person was negative, they still contributed something to my life, and even if it was negative, it developed me in a particular way where either I realized that I needed to be or evolve into a different person, because a person can go two ways when they deal with negativity. They can evolve into a different type of person. And it can be good and it can be bad. You know, every time somebody deal with a negative person, they don't come out unscathed. They come out with some little bit of damage. They come out with some little bit of, for lack of better terms, some type of abuse, depending on how negative the person was. You know, because they could have been an abuser, or they could have been narcissistic. They could have been any of those things. So one of the things is being mindful of the type of negative person that you're dealing with. So yes, I had negative father figures and I had positive father figures. You know, those that actually contribute something, that was showing me a skill, that was trying to develop me and help educate me and learn different skills and everything. And then you had those that were negative father figures that kind of took away from that, or was only trying to be there in order to kind of get something out of the situation, not necessarily for me, but you know, they could try to get something from my mom, like, you know, sex, time, devotion, and anything like that. And then being nice to me and have a conversation with me in order to be able to do that. But it's not something that you would recognize right then and there. It's not something that would be prevalent right in that moment. Okay, so you know, having those type of father figures, because they contributed something, even though what they contributed wouldn't be recognized right then and there, they still contributed something. And it just takes a long time to kind of think back to it, like, hey, like, from that situation, I learned how to recognize this, or I learned that. And even though it wasn't noticeable then, it was noticeable a little bit later along in life. So, you know, thinking back on a lot of these scenarios and situations, so far as like the trauma and some of the things that I've dealt with, you know, I know at the end of the day, the person that it evolved me into coming out of that situation. And then we want to talk about the trauma from relationships. Now, trauma in relationships is a lot different than the trauma that you may receive from from, you know, family or parents or anything, but they go hand in hand, okay? Because, you know, the relationship that you have with your family members and the trauma that you suffer from there, and then the relationship that you actually walk into willingly and voluntarily, and then you're subject to abuse, or you're subject to some type of trauma from that relationship, is so much more different, because that person is a stranger. You know, the trust there was earned, you know, and the relationship was built, and in some instances there's manipulation and gaining and taking from you as a person in that relationship. So when we look at trauma from those relationships, I have trauma from those relationships. One relationship that I can actually speak on is when I was going to get married. So this was about 10 years ago. Well, like 10 years ago, I actually got a message about it on Google Photos, and it had showed me, like, goes back in time and it shows you the map. So it showed me the map from the time I had drove from Michigan to New York to go ahead and meet her parents. I'd go meet her dad and everything. And I took my son with me, so it was a very interesting trip. It was like our first road trip. You know, he was a little young. We had our first road trip to New York. So I had a fiance, and we had dated for a year, and I had proposed to her. And everything was going well, and then out of nowhere, she just abruptly left. Now, we had an argument about finances. And finances was like one of the biggest things for us, because of the job she worked, and I was working 2 jobs and going to school, trying to, you know, maintain the household and the kids and everything, because she had a daughter, I had my son. And at the time, you know, we were living together as I proposed to her. And 4 months later, and about a week after we had the conversation about finances, she ended up walking out the door. And I couldn't understand why she left. But I'll be honest that this situation occurred because she had called me, told me she wasn't feeling well about the situation that we were in, and that she was going to leave and go back to her auntie house. And it kind of devastated me because I'm like, okay, well, we were in a process of buying a house, and we was gonna get the house. They was gonna have the wedding, and then we was gonna start our life together. But me, being the type of person that I was, I started strategizing to make sure that everything could still go through, even if she decided to leave. Because I tried to, before I started making my phone calls, don't chastise me yet. Before I started making phone calls, I tried to call her, tried to text her, everything. I couldn't get a hold of her, and I couldn't just leave from work because I didn't know where she was at. So I couldn't just go like racing around the city trying to find her. Didn't know where she was at. So I started calling around, called my financial advisors, and at the time, me and her was both working with the financial advisors to go ahead and get our finances together. And by the time that I had called them, I got a phone call from her, and she was accusing me of leaving her because I had made these phone calls, putting things in place, which I can see that how that will portray itself. But that wasn't the case. I was more so like concerned for me and my son because our lease was about to be up, and I'm panicking. Instead of talking to her, I started making arrangements. So I could see how that was going to happen. And ever since she left, it left me completely devastated. And I can honestly say from that devastation, I haven't been able to have a meaningful relationship after that. Out of the fear that a woman would just leave, just out of nowhere, whether we're married, engaged, long-term relationship, everything. And then to add insult to injury, I got it. To add insult to injury, God damn it. To add insult to injury, it didn't make it better when the statistics about divorce and marriage started to come out of how relationships or marriages are broken up because the woman is the one that filed for divorce, and it's slated that 90% of marriages end divorce, and it is filed 90% of the time is filed by women. Okay, so it was kind of like this big thing that had came out, and I was like, man, I don't know if I want to get married. But then another statistic came out that if you put a prenup in place, then women won't leave. Those that have a prenup in place don't end in divorce as much as those that don't have a prenup in place. So you start hearing all those statistics, and you start thinking to yourself like, man, well, I don't want to be in that situation where I don't have nothing to go on. I don't have nothing to go back to. So, but that was my trauma, and I just been in fear of being able to love and bring somebody into the fold, not knowing whether or not they're gonna leave or not. And from the times that I have opened up and allowed somebody to come in and allow somebody to be part of my life and allow for myself to open my heart and love them, open arms, open heart, open mind, and everything, and it falls apart like sand falling through your hands. It was difficult to hold on to. Well, I wouldn't say sand, I would say water. Like water falling through your hands, like you're trying to cup the water, but it keeps seeping through your hands. So no matter how hard you try or how much you try to hold on to it, it evaporates. Not evaporate, but it just slips out of your hand. No matter how much you try to cup the water, it just slips out of your hand. And that's kind of what I was going into. Now, I will say that I have found a lot of growth from that relationship. Like I found out that was a trigger for me when it came to relationships, because once relationships started to get past like 6 months, 7 months, I was gonna start to kind of back up, like, okay, well, it's getting a little too serious. Like, I need to find an exit strategy. I need to get the fuck on. That's kind of was my mindset. But I've also learned that I had to grow out of that. And once I recognized that that was a situation, I was like, okay, well, I need to take some time to myself. So I started to be by myself. I started to kind of just learn and grow with me and heal from that situation from a long time ago. And I kind of been doing that for like the last, it's about 3 years. And don't get me wrong, I have been dating and everything, but for the most part, I kind of try to just stay to myself for a little bit, kind of mind my own business. It gets kind of hard sometimes, because you want that companionship and you want to have that relationship. And to be quite honest, a lot of people that I know that's around me, they're married or they're in a long-term relationship. So like the family members that I do hang out with, I'm like the 11th wheel. It's kind of hard being the 11th wheel because you ain't got nobody, So it gets a little difficult because you see everybody in relationships, loving and companionship. So you seek those type of people for advice. And I think it's kind of great or a blessing in disguise that a lot of people that are around me are actually married. So that kind of gives me a perspective on what marriages look like and the struggles that they go through and the conversations that they have and the dedication and the hard work that it goes into. And I thank those guys that are there having those conversations with me and kind of just cheering me on, like, you're gonna find somebody, or you gotta stop being in your head so much, or you gotta stop being you, stop standing in your own way. And it's kind of funny. I was talking to one of my friends, and she actually seen like one of my podcasts, and she actually seen a post that I had put on Instagram, and one of the things she had messaged me is like, blah 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 blah, marriage is what you make it, I don't care about no statistics. And she was kind of going in on me, so I was like, look, you need to come on the podcast if you feel like that. Like, I got a mouthful for you. But I have friends like that, and I appreciate those friends that are in my corner, not allowing me to kind of fall into the background in belief that, that marriage is not for me because of what had happened, what had occurred. So that was kind of the mindset for a little bit. And like I said, I grew out of it. I found growth, in the whole situation. So I'm actually, excited to be able to, or if, not be able to, but, when I find the right one, I can love, cherish, and, be myself and open-hearted. Because a lot of people out here, they're in relationships and they being fake. They can't even really be themselves. Well, I ain't gonna say a lot of people. I'm gonna say there's some people in relationships that can't be themselves. They're being superficial, fictitious, or how the case is. So I can really appreciate those that are in relationships that's being their authentic selves. Okay. Now, the other thing that I say about that is that I can forgive my ex-fiance for walking out because I had a part in it too. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't even chase her. I kind of cussed her out, but I didn't chase her. And that was me being prideful. That was me being a whole lot of stuff that I had to grow out of. Okay. I can't forgive the negative father figures that I had that had their kind of contribution to my involvement to who I am. I love those father figures that gave me positivity and stood by my side. And even now, if I was to call on them, they'll still be there. And the last thing that I kind of want to touch on is that forgiveness is a power that's bestowed upon you to forgive others. And you may not think that it's a power that's bestowed upon you because it takes a lot to be able to forgive somebody. But I can tell you right now, you have to forgive. And the reason why you should forgive, you don't even have to tell them that you forgive them. You forgive them for you. You let go of that burden. You let go of that energy. And I'll tell you why. I had an auntie that recently passed. And when she passed, we haven't had contact for 25 years. Okay? Say about 25 years we haven't had contact. The last time I talked to her, she was cussing me out about an incident that had happened at my mom's apartment. She was cussing me out. That's the last time I talked to her. I literally wrote her off. Just, I don't even want to deal with you. Like, we're done. Just no conversation. I mean, it was an auntie I barely talked to any fucking ways. I mean, I barely talked to her anyways, okay? So, when she died, I felt a little indifferent because, yes, this is family, but I didn't have no conversation with her. There was nothing to, like, forgive, for lack of better words. There was no kind of conversation. There was no anything. I had nothing to go on. But I sat at this funeral, empty and emotionless to the whole situation, because I'm like, this is a person that cussed me out. But also, this was my auntie. This was my mom's sister. Like, I should feel something, anything. And I couldn't bring myself to feel anything at all. But at the end of it, I had to forgive her because it was something that was weighing on me for 25 years, and I haven't even seen this lady, nor did I talk to her. Now I can't even have a conversation to even understand what her mindset was for why she cussed out a 14-year-old. Why she cussed out a 14-year-old? I couldn't understand for the life of me. I'm never going to get that chance to have that conversation. But I forgive her. I forgive her for what she did. I don't know why she did it, but I forgive her because I have to release that burden. I have to release that energy. I have to release that thought. I no longer want to carry that mindset with me going forward in life. I no longer want to carry those images or those memories from when I was younger. I just want to walk away from it. There's no need to hold on to it at all anymore. This is Pharaoh Mr. Nice Guy. I'm your host, MNG. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Check out some of our other episodes. They're great. That's about as much as I can tell you. They're great. Make sure you follow us on all social medias. Hey, drop us a line. Hey, I'll catch you on the next recording. Peace.